Deep in the jungles of French Guiana, there once stood a place so infamous, its name became a synonym for hell on earth, the Devil's Island Penal Colony. For nearly 100 years, this was more than just a prison. It was a one-way ticket to a living nightmare, a place from which escape was said to be impossible. But what made Devil's Island so uniquely terrifying? It wasn't just the iron bars or the armed guards. It was a perfect storm of brutal heat, relentless disease, and systematic human cruelty. Today, we're journeying back in time to uncover the shocking truth behind the world's most notorious prison. The story begins in 1852. Under the rule of Napoleon III, France needed a solution for its overflowing prisons and a way to deal with its most hardened criminals and political prisoners. The answer was found thousands of miles away in a remote and unforgiving corner of South America. The idea was simple: send them to a place so isolated and harsh that they would never trouble France again. The penal colony wasn't just one island, but a network of camps spread across the mainland, and three small islands known as the Îles du Salut, or the Islands of Salvation. The irony of that name is staggering. The main island was Isle Royale, the administrative center. The second, Isle St. Joseph, was reserved for solitary confinement, a place of silent madness. And the third, the smallest and most dreaded, was Isle du Diable Devil's Island itself. Imagine being a prisoner stepping off the boat. The first thing that hits you is the heat, a suffocating, humid heat that never breaks, day or night. The air is thick with mosquitoes carrying malaria and yellow fever. The jungle is a wall of green, hiding venomous snakes, spiders, and countless other dangers. The guards tell you the real prison walls aren't stone, but the jungle on one side and the shark-infested ocean on the other. Hope dies almost instantly. The prisoners were known as Bagnards. Their days were a monotonous cycle of back-breaking labor under the blistering sun. They were forced to build roads that led to nowhere, chop down massive jungle trees, and drain disease-ridden swamps, often while shackled together. The work was pointless, designed not for productivity, but to break their spirits. Malnutrition was rampant. The daily diet consisted of a piece of dry bread, some rancid lard, and a watery soup that barely sustained life. Scurvy, dysentery, and other deficiency diseases were just as deadly as any guard's weapon. The guards themselves were a mix of French soldiers and local recruits, many of whom were just as brutalized by the environment as the prisoners. They ruled through fear and violence. Beatings were common for the smallest infractions. Any sign of defiance was met with a trip to the dreaded solitary confinement cells on St. Joseph. These were called the reclusion. Prisoners were thrown into dark, poorly ventilated cells, sometimes in complete silence for years. Many went insane. The psychological torture was as devastating as the physical abuse. The system was designed to strip away every last shred of humanity. But what truly made Devil's Island a sentence worse than death was a cruel policy known as doublage. This law stated that after a prisoner completed their sentence, if it was longer than 8 years, they were required to remain in French Guiana as a libéré, or a freedman, for the rest of their lives. If their sentence was shorter, they had to stay for a period equal to their original sentence. This was the ultimate trap. With no money, no skills, and a criminal record, these ex-prisoners were trapped. They couldn't afford passage back to France and were shunned by the local population. Most ended up as beggars, dying of starvation or disease in the streets of Cayenne, the capital city. The prison had a revolving door, but it only led to a larger, more desperate prison outside the walls. Less than 10% of those sent to French Guiana ever saw Europe again. Perhaps the most famous prisoner of Devil's Island was Captain Alfred Dreyfus, a French artillery officer falsely convicted of treason in 1894. His case became a massive political scandal in France. Dreyfus, a man of status and education, was sent to the desolate Devil's Island itself, held in complete isolation. Unlike the other prisoners, he was the sole occupant of the island for 4 years. His hut was surrounded by a 7-foot-high palisade, and he was shackled to his bed at night. He wasn't subjected to the same forced labor, but the psychological torment of his solitary existence, coupled with the brutal climate, nearly killed him. His eventual exoneration brought international attention to the horrors of the penal colony, planting the first seeds of its eventual downfall. But for every Dreyfus, there were thousands of forgotten souls. Men like Henry Charrière, whose famous memoir, Papillon, chronicled his alleged harrowing escapes. While historians debate the accuracy of his book, it captured the world's imagination and painted a vivid picture of the desperation and unbreakable will to survive that defined life there. Charrière described attempts to escape on crude rafts, battling sharks and treacherous currents, knowing that capture meant an almost certain death sentence or a return to the hell of solitary. Most escape attempts failed. The jungle, the sea, and the bounty hunters, often former prisoners themselves, claimed countless lives. Yet the dream of freedom, however faint, was the only thing that kept many men going. The conditions were so horrific that the international community began to protest. Journalists and human rights advocates exposed the atrocities. One report from the 1920s described the colony as a dry guillotine, a machine that slowly and painfully executed men through disease, exhaustion, and despair. The numbers are horrifying. It's estimated that over 70,000 men were sent to the French Guiana penal colony. Of those, as many as 50,000 never left. They lie in unmarked graves, swallowed by the jungle they were forced to tame. Finally, in 1938, the French government officially stopped sending prisoners to Devil's Island. However, World War II delayed its closure, and the last prisoners weren't repatriated until 1953. The camps were abandoned, left to be reclaimed by the jungle. For decades, the buildings crumbled, vines snaking through the rusted bars of the cells, a silent testament to the suffering that occurred within their walls. Today, the Îles du Salut are a tourist destination. Visitors can walk through the restored ruins of the warden's house, the hospital, and even the solitary confinement cells on St. Joseph. It's a strange, almost surreal experience. The islands are beautiful, with palm trees and turquoise waters, but you can still feel a chill in the air, a shadow of the past that lingers. The guides tell stories of the ghosts of prisoners said to still haunt the grounds. Standing in one of those dark, cramped cells, you begin to understand why. It's a somber reminder of a dark chapter in history. So, why was Devil's Island the worst prison ever? It was the perfect diabolical combination of factors. A lethal environment, a system of forced labor designed to kill, institutionalized cruelty, and the psychological torment of the doublage policy, which erased any hope of ever returning home. It wasn't just a place of confinement. It was a factory of death, engineered to destroy a man's body and soul. Its legacy serves as a powerful warning about the depths of human cruelty and the importance of justice and human rights. The story of Devil's Island isn't just history. It's a lesson we should never forget. Thanks for watching. If you found this journey into history as fascinating as I did, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the world's most incredible and infamous places. See you next time.